Hey everybody, my name's Ryan, and here at eTrailer we install, test, fit, and review a lot of different parts. That way we could try to answer any questions those of you might have. And that's exactly what we're doing here today on our 2018 Kia Sorento. We're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install the eTrailer Universal Brake Controller Install Kit. So what's nice about this kit is it's going to provide you with pretty much, for the most part, everything you need to hook up your brake controller. Now, when you start looking into doing that, things can get pretty confusing pretty quick. So this kit is going to make it much simpler. Like I said, everything you're going to need is going to be more or less in this one package. So it's going to give you the 7-way plug, and it's also going to allow you to power up your brake controller and provide all the inputs that it needs as well. Now, this will work with pretty much any brake controller for the most part. They're all hooked up very similar, so regardless of what brand or type of brake controller you have, this is going to be able to power it up. What's pretty cool about this as well, not only do you get your 7-way plug, but you also get a 4-way plug too. And that was something that was pretty important to our customer today. He tows multiple trailers. Some use a 7-way, some use a 4, and he didn't want to have to deal with putting an adapter in here every time and keeping track of it. So the fact that this has a 4-way plug as well can make life really convenient when you go to hook up to different trailers. Now, something to keep in mind is you will need existing 4-pole wiring to be able to hook all this up. If your Sorento already has it, great, something you don't need to worry about. If not, you are going to need to pick up that wiring. And honestly, it's not really a big deal. The majority of these Sorentos have a plug-and-play type 4-pole wiring that you just plug right in, and then you can go on and hook up your kit here. If you need some wiring, there's some choices you can find and pick up right here at eTrailer. Now, something I do want to mention, if not having this extra 4-pole connection here isn't that big of a deal to you, and you'd rather have just one big complete kit, Takancha makes a really nice setup. It's the OEM replacement vehicle wiring harness, which will allow you to have your 7-way and be able to have all those wires and functions you need to be able to hook up your brake controller to. It's a nice setup. Everything has wire loom on it and is appropriate length and so on. So that's just another option for those of you that are trying to figure out which will be best for your particular situation. But other than that, it's going to provide us with all of our necessary lighting functions too. So our 4-way, it's going to give us our brake lights, left turn, right turn, and tail lights. Our 7-ways, again, going to give us those 4 functions, our stop, turn signals, and tail lights, but it's also going to give us that brake output signal, as well as that 12-volt auxiliary power signal. So if, say, maybe you have a dump trailer, maybe a pop-up camper, something like that that has batteries on it, when you hook up to that, this can have the ability to charge those batteries as you're going down the road too. So nice little convenient feature that can really come in handy. So at the end of the day, a nice little kit that's going to give you a 7-way as well as that 4, and give you the ability to hook up to your brake controller. So one you really can't go wrong with. Now, as far as the installation goes, it's really not too complicated. However, it is time consuming. Just hooking up all the wires and running them can take up a little bit of time. But as long as you stay focused and patient, it shouldn't give you a whole lot of issues. Speaking of that installation, let's go ahead and hook everything up together now. To begin our installation, we're going to be here at the back of our Sorento. And the first thing we need to do is mount up our 7-way plug. So it is going to come included with this bracket. You may need to grab an extra bracket if you want to mount it like we have it here. I just used a no-drill long bracket to accomplish that. And you can find many others here at eTrailer. What we're going to do, just slide everything through. Kind of try to push it up and over our hitch there, out of the way. And pretty straightforward from here. We're just going to take the included hardware and secure it to our bracket there. I like to get all 4 of them started, and then I can come back and snug them all down once I have that done. So now what we can do is take our 4-pole end here coming from our 7-way plug, and that's going to need to get plugged into our existing 4-pole wiring. So before we do that, what I like to do and what I suggest doing is using some dielectric grease and just putting it on those terminals. With this being outside all the time, this will really help keep these terminals protected against corrosion and things like that. If you don't have any at home, you can grab it here at eTrailer. So we'll get that coated real good. And this is pretty straightforward. It's just going to plug into each other. And then what I like to do just to make a kind of a semi-permanent connection is just take a zip tie. Kind of wrap it around the 2 plugs there and run it down. That way we don't have to worry about it coming loose over time or anything like that. Or if we ever do need to take it apart, all we're going to have to do is cut the zip tie. Now what we can do is just kind of clean up our wiring a little bit, get this yellow one out of the way. And I say that because we're not going to be using this yellow wire. This is for a reverse light circuit. And typically you need to hook this up unless you were maybe pulling a larger boat trailer or something like that. So our customer isn't. So that's what we're going to do is kind of clean it up. I'm just going to take a piece of tape and just tape it. I won't cut it off completely or anything like that. That way in the future, if you do want to hook it up, you got it and you can. With that being said, we'll just get this all taped up out of the way. That way we have a little easier of a time getting the rest of our wires hooked up. Now what we're able to do is take this white wire here with the pre-attached ring terminal, and that's going to be a ground, so we're going to need to secure it to the body of our vehicle. Now what I went ahead and did is just lowered our spare tire out of the way, makes it a lot easier to get to, and we're going to secure the wire using the provided self-tapping screw right here on this metal flange. Now what we can do is take our duplex wiring, this bundle here that's in this gray sheath. Underneath the sheath, you're going to have 2 separate wires. So we can strip them back. So you're just going to peel off that insulation, maybe like a 1/4 inch, something like that, on both those wires. And these are going to get connected to these 2 wires here from our 7-way. Now I did put on heat shrink butt connectors. The ones that come pre-attached and included will work just fine. However, the heat shrinks do offer a little more protection because we can seal up the ends. If you'd rather use those, you can grab them here at eTrailer. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the black wire and connect that to the black wire from our 7-way. So that'll go into the end of the butt connector. And you'll just crimp it down. And that'll connect those 2 wires together. And we're going to do the same thing for this white wire. That one's going to get plugged into the blue side there. So once I have these crimped down, I can come back with my heat source and seal up the ends. So what I went ahead and did was just kind of bundle up all of our wiring here and zip tied it up and out of the way to help clean up our install look. And then from there, I actually routed our wiring here from the back up to the front of our vehicle. And this is a path that I took. Just ran it along through here. And I just used some zip ties along the way to keep it secure. And up and over our subframe. And when you do this, do your best to avoid any hot and moving parts as well. It comes down right through here. And just runs along through here. At this point, I started following some of our factory brake lines and things like that. You may have a shield, a plastic shield here that covers all this, so you might need to take it off. If that's the case, you can usually just take off a few 10mm nuts and that'll drop down, make it a lot easier to see. But so I just continued on along through here, and we're going to need to run this up into the engine compartment. And what I've done is just used a pull wire. So this is a piece of tubing, but you can use a coat hanger or something like that. Drop it down from the top side, tape your wiring to it, and then you're going to be able to go up top and easily pull on your wire and bring our electrical wiring right where we need it to be. So underneath the hood here in the engine compartment, this is where our wiring came up. About right there, I removed that gray sheathing. That way we can work with our two wires independently. We'll let that hang out for a second, and we can move on to our breakers, which are these right here. We need to secure these down. Right here along this ledge is a good spot to secure them. It's out of the way. We're not going to have any contact with our hood when we close it or anything like that. You're going to have a 40 amp breaker, which is this one here, and a 20 amp breaker, which is this one right here. So I'm just going to use the provided self-tapping screws to secure these down. To hook our wiring up to the breakers, what we're going to do is first take the black wire that goes back to our 7-way. This is going to get connected to the silver post here on our 40 amp breaker. So I just kind of eyeballed the length. We're going to trim it to length. Strip back that insulation. Then we're going to take a small ring terminal, slide that over, crimp it on, remove this nut, and slide that onto the post there, and reinstall the nut. So now what I've done is that black wire that we trimmed off, I took it and made two pieces like this. So each wire I crimped on a small ring terminal on one end, and on the other end of the wire I crimped on the larger ring terminals. And what we're going to do is the larger ring terminals are going to go to the positive side of our battery, and the smaller ones are going to get hooked up to one side of our breaker. So we'll start with our 40 amp breaker here. That'll go on the gold post. Get that nut started. And then the other wire that we made, again, the small end will go on this 20 amp breaker's gold post as well. So once you have that on there, I'll grab that nut that fell down there in a moment, but for now I'll just steal this side off and get this one going. So once we have both of them started, we'll come back and snug them down. Now, as I mentioned, these larger ring terminal ends are going to get hooked up to the positive battery terminal. So you're going to open up this cover, and we're going to use this nut right here. It's a 10mm, and what I've done is just took a pair of snips and kind of clipped away some of this plastic here. That way we could get our wires in there. That being said, we'll grab our socket. Get this nut removed. And actually this is one that isn't completely designed to be all the way removed, or at least easily. So instead of fighting with that, what I'm going to do is just trim small openings in our ring terminal here. Just cut a little section out of each one. And then we should be able to kind of sneak them in around the stud and underneath the nut there, and that'll be just fine. That'll give us a good connection point without too much trouble. Once you have them pushed in there, go ahead and tighten that nut back down. Now what we can do is you're going to want to cut off maybe about 4 to 5 foot off the end of our white wire, and one end of it we're going to leave plain for now. The other side we're going to take the large ring terminal, crimp it on, and cut it just like we did on the wires that went to the positive side of the battery. So we made that little opening, and this is going to get connected to the negative side of our battery, or the ground side, which is right here. So we'll take this cover off. This just lifts up. And more or less the same deal. We'll grab our 10mm socket, loosen up that nut, put our ring terminal into position, and just tighten this nut back down. And take our cap, put that back on. And then what we can do, we're just kind of getting everything ready here to run inside of our vehicle. We're going to take maybe about 4 foot of black wire. One end, crimp on that small ring terminal. The other end we're going to leave plain again. However, once we hook this up to our breaker, this wire could have power to it. So I do suggest putting some tape or something there over the end of it, just so we don't bump into metal and potentially create a spark or anything like that. And just like all the others, this will simply go over that stud, take our nut, and tighten that back down as well. Now once this is tight, we can go inside of the vehicle under the dash and drill a hole. That way we can run some of our wiring inside. So here we are on the driver's side underneath the dash, and I went ahead and drilled a hole through the firewall. That way we could run our wires through there. It's right up under here, kind of on this left-hand side, kind of up towards the center. So here's where that hole is that I created. All I did is just used some snips to kind of cut this carpet back. And I chose right here because it's easy to get to, and in the open we didn't have to worry about drilling into anything. You still want to be careful while you're doing it though, and really double check, but just used a 1/2-inch drill bit to create the hole, and then I used a snap bushing to pop in there. That way we don't have to worry about our wires kind of hitting that bare metal. You can find these snap bushings here at eTrailer. And so once I had that hold on, I just used another pull wire. Again, this is just tubing. You can use a coat hanger or something like that though too. Push it through there into the engine compartment, and we can go under the hood, tape our 3 wires that we need to pull inside to our fish wire. We'll be able to pull that, feed them in, where we can finish getting everything hooked up. Now at this point we can start to hook up our favorite brake controller. Now the one we're doing today, and one that I really like, is the Red Arc Tow Pro Liberty. Really small, super easy to use, and so on. But just to kind of summarize what our wires are for. So this wire here, that goes to the negative terminal on our battery. That's going to be the ground for our brake controller. The black wire, that's going to be the power supply for our brake controller. And the other white wire, this one runs all the way back to our 7-way. This is going to be for our electric brake output. So now it is a good idea too, once everything's hooked up, to check our 7-way to make sure we have all of our functions. So in the top right corner of our tester, you can see we have our 12-volt auxiliary power, so we know that's good. If we hit our brake controller override, we have that signal, so we know that's good. Now we'll try our left turn, our right turn, our brakes, as well as our running lights. It's also a good idea just to check our 4-way as well, just to make sure everything is working. So again, we'll try our left turn on that, our right turn, our brakes, and last but not least, our running lights. And that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the etrailer.com Universal Brake Controller Install Kit on our 2018 Kia Sorento.